everyone. Welcome back to the Wrestling Prep Podcast. We're here with head coach Carolyn Wester, and our guest today, or her guest today, is Cornell Robinson. I'm excited to sit down and have a conversation with two of the best coaches in the business today. So, Carolyn, why don't you start us off to tell us how you met Cornell, how you know Cornell, and then we'll start the conversation there.
I actually met Cornell in St. Louis. I was asked to come out to the school that he eventually became the head coach of, Christian Brothers College Prep. Is that correct? CBC?
Yep.
And I met Cornell that day there. The same day I met Nolan Saunders.
Okay.
And Joshua must have been in, I don't know, 6th or 7th grade. And Cornell was the coach of Extreme, I believe, was the name of the club at the time and still is. And that's, basically how we met.
And I used to watch your videos, I think you used to do for when you ran the Sunday practices in California. So I kind of knew of you before you came down.
Yeah, but that's where we met. And what struck me about Cornell originally was right from the beginning, he seemed to have no agenda toward any of the athletes. He wasn't trying to control what was being coached. He wasn't trying to keep new relationships from being made. He was focused. He paid attention to what I was saying. And, I could tell right away that he was entwined with what the athletes wanted to do, as opposed to trying to present himself or create a barrier between information he may never have heard before and the athletes he worked with and himself, which was a pleasant change for sure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
What do you remember? What do you remember about that?
I remember just I was really just watching and learning. I was seeing the movements, and I just knew, like, when I watched the movements you were having the kids do, the penetration steps you had them doing, I knew it fit amongst the 7 basic skills of wrestling: stance, motion, lift, back step, back arch, penetration, level change. And I knew it fit amongst all those skills. But in my mind, when I was watching, I was trying to figure out how to, one, what's the positives in it, and two, I really see that it made the kids better athletes. I think not only you make them better wrestlers, they make them better athletes. And I think, that's where you have your niche, is you can make somebody a better athlete. And I think, like, when I grew up wrestling, it wasn't how athletic you can be. It was how long you can last. Right. And you still got to kind of have a little bit of that. I mean, practice will be 2 hours, right? Right. They lock the door, they turn up the heat, and you just wrestle as hard as you can. But, they didn't emphasize athleticism. And I think, Carolyn really emphasizes becoming a better athlete as well as a better wrestler. And that's what really I took out of it from the beginning. And then seeing what Carolyn does and able to travel the world and watch some of the best kids and senior level athletes in the world, the wrestlers in the world, I notice how athletic they are. And I'm like, well, that's the difference between the world level. You got to be an athlete.
And you have to be an athlete in a way that applies to technique, not just this is athletic, but it has to correspond to technique so they can drop it in and use it. And sometimes when wrestlers are taught athleticism that's not directly correlated to technique, they end up picking up habits that are not beneficial to them, like round off back handspring. While that's a very athletic move, there's no time in wrestling. You as a coach, Bryce, Cornell, or I want our athletes to land with their feet together on flat feet. We want them hard, able to shoot, heel over toe, gap hamstring, and he wants them to go forward. And I think that's a big difference also.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't know if I can spill a little bit of your secrets, but I know the most important, not one of the most important things, but a lot of things I learned from you. But one thing that I noticed from that day specifically was your heel toe concept. And when you get caught in the split, using your back toe. And right away, I noticed if you get in that position with your heel toe, your hands are free to wrestle and move instead of post on the mat for balance. So, I mean, that's actually, I learned that first day. And I think that was one of the key things that stuck with me.
Isn't that so interesting? And we've seen it. And I taught Tyler Lillard how to do that online. And you see Tyler, Aaron Gadara and Drew Morgan. I mean, there were so many people who can see it. Or Chris Crawford. right? When you took over at SEM, you inherited Chris, and I'd been working with Chris, and I remember his dad calling me and saying that Chris was wrestling, and Cornell looked over his shoulder and said, Carolyn just won that point for you, or Carolyn won that match for you, or something, because he had done something that Cornell had recognized that he probably had been practicing sequentially with me. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and then ever since then, I see if somebody's in a split with their back shoelaces flat, then I'm like, okay, they don't really know what they're doing. They just know how to wrestle a little bit. So, but yeah, that's definitely one of the main things that I got from you.
And you know what I've learned a lot from Cornell? One is not to react to people, but two is Cornell has so much depth of knowledge, and he applies strategy to specific matches and training for specific events. A lot of families and coaches focus on like dual tournaments or specific tournaments. And Cornell could probably come in where I usually say you can't teach somebody very much a week before. It's going to make a big difference. But if Cornell understands the skill set the athlete already has, the wrestler already has, he could say, here is what you're going to do. It's going to be the easiest for you to expose the back, or this is what they're doing in Russia, or this is what they're doing in Japan, or he knows all of those things. How many world teams have you coached for USA Wrestling?
Man, I think I've been about 12 or 13 of them, actually. So it's been a lot.
There has been a lot. There's been a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, I don't know if Saunders was your first athlete to make a world team of some sort, but that's the first one, of course, I remember, right? Because I was involved with him too and traveled with him too. But what I've noticed, I had athletes going to Wyoming Seminary when Scott Green was the coach, and there was a big jump in match knowledge and success in the international styles and the folk style of wrestling when Cornell took over. And what I saw was, instead of this grinding, who's going to last the longest, beat people up, hand fight, was a lot of finesse and a lot of focus on that individual person, what their skill set was or could be developed, as opposed to this kind of cookie cutter forced on top, scenario. So even in the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, how much success have those athletes had at the world level?
Yeah, it's been, those last couple of years have just been crazy, including the women's program. And I think the women's program always had like maybe one, like your Blades was pretty good, and Reese Laramie, maybe I pronounced her name right, but it'd have been like 1 or 2 kids make the world team. But in the last 3 to 2 years, we'd had like maybe 3 girls make a world team or 4. Like, it's been crazy.
Oh, that's amazing.
Not to mention
Luke, Joe. I mean, there's more, right? Jack Dara.
Yeah, Jack Dara made one. Actually, I think Jack made a couple before he even got to SEM.
Right, you were coaching him when you were coaching him in
at CBC. Yeah, we were at CBC. Who else? I don't think this boys year. I know the girls we had Jacqueline Mazakis, Emma Bacon, Healy, and then the year before that we had a couple other girls. It's been a lot. It's been confusing. So it's been a lot of them.
For sure.
Oh, Claire Bowie, yeah.
Right. And then how many has Luke been in now? 2 golds, 2 silvers?
He's been on 4 world teams in high school, and a U17 silver, a U17 gold, a U20 silver, and a U20 gold. And he's on the U23 team as well. As a matter of fact, Luke is the only wrestler, like out of Kyle Snyder, Henry Cejudo, Spencer Lee. He's the only wrestler to have been in 4 world championships while in high school.
Isn't that crazy? And he's 18, 19?
Just turned 19, I think, a couple weeks ago.
It's sort of similar understanding to Amit Elor. She won, 3, I think it was 3 age divisions in 1 year. And
that was crazy.
Yes, and her, from my understanding, her mom philosophy was not tournament driven, but was training driven. They decided to self-select out of California high school competition and go to online opportunities provided by their school district, and then take her around the country to train, and then eventually around the world. And then when she started competing, she had success right from the get-go.
And Amit is the first wrestler to ever do that at the Senior Worlds, U23 and U20s. Did she win U17 that year also?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, that's for real crazy. So she's the only wrestler ever to ever do that.
Yes. Yeah, it cracks me up because somebody was asking me about her the other day, and they said, have you worked with her? I said, yeah, I worked with her when she was young, like 7 to 14, along with a lot of people. But she does, I don't even know if she knows, she just runs out and goes to the L-level stance right away at the beginning of every match. And so much of what she does is the way she uses her body. Then she applies the technique that she either learned, from a variety of people.
Right.
But she uses her body with that same sort of focus that she had, that we do from when an athlete first starts all the way through their career.
Yeah. And that's why like the wrestling prep is just such a good foundation as well. Like I said, it's just the overall base of, I would say, body positioning and awareness, but just knowing how to put yourself in the right body position to recover or move in a combat sport.
I remember being over at Nona's, and you and I and Brian were watching some D1 team wrestling, and somebody was stuck in a position, and Cornell said, "Oh, ask Carolyn; she'll know how to get out of that." Or coming to Sem, and Cornell would say, "Hey, these where my athletes are getting stuck. What do we do here?" And I'm like, "Well, let's not get in that position." He goes, "Well, they're going to get in the position. We can't change everything today, but how do we get out of that position? Right? What's the movement, the muscle order? How can we make that better and get out of that position or score from that position?" Which is, I think, what a lot of people overlook. And I do think that's why a lot of the athletes that'll be at week 2 that are from D1 programs, when their coaches say, "Hey, I hope you're going back this year," because when they come back, they've remembered how to put themselves in position that's so effective that they don't have to try to spiral through a large amount of technique to be successful. They can do what actually is what probably the strongest engineering piece of technique they can do in that situation.
All right. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
It seems like that's when this becomes a lot more fun, where instead of just teaching a whole bunch of separate techniques that you're supposed to glue together to score, it becomes more of a problem solving, an issue of problem solving with how you move your body in a way that's going to either put you in a good position or score from a bad position. And if you have a set of principles that allows you to move well and improve your position sequentially, you can be successful there. I know both of you had touched on a little bit something that I know we wanted to talk about as far as and Carolyn, you had mentioned it with Amit, and I know Cornell with some of his athletes had talked about the difference between sort of competition and training, and how to spend. I know, at least at the local level here, and both of you have coached some of the more successful athletes at all levels, but locally here, there's a lot of wrestlers that'll every single weekend they'll be paying to enter some large tournament that calls itself a national tournament, and they're traveling around the Southwest or however far they want to travel to be seen, and they might wrestle 100, 200 matches there. I know there are a lot of coaches that sort of brag about the number of matches their kids are wrestling in the off season, where I've always thought you don't necessarily get better at wrestling by competing. You get better at wrestling by training. And it sounds like some of your more successful athletes have taken that approach as well, probably under your guidance. And so tell us a little more about that, the contrast there between needing to compete and the utility of training and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say right off the bat, I'm going to ask Cornell this question. So Cornell, how many athletes do you think, roughly, round up, you've helped you've spoken to the college coach and you've helped them get recruited or find opportunities? How many? 100? 200?
Yeah. Over 100.
Right. And how many do you think I have? 400? 500?
Yeah.
Has a
About
coach
400 or 500.
has a coach ever asked you how somebody did at a dual tournament?
Nope.
Old style nationals,
Nope.
right? That
Tulsa Nationals.
Tulsa
Nope.
Nationals, nope. Reno Worlds,
Nope.
where they are in the ranking, what they did. What did you tell me? You might not remember, but I remember one of the last times we were in the room together at SEM, and it was you and me, and the rest of the coaches hadn't arrived or were somewhere else. And I was showing some of the athletes, I think it was Nate Desmond and some others, how to shoot with both legs, right? How to trail leg and then lead leg. So 4 different shots. And what did you tell me that Cale Sanderson told you?
He said he doesn't recruit no athlete that can't switch their feet.
Yes.
And Cale Sanderson, coach of Penn State, that's how he recruits. You got to be able to switch your feet and attack both sides of the body.
And I just had this athlete who's very good, and he's young and he's coming up, and he works with me and some other coaches. And the other coach said he was suffering an injury, and he said to him, now that you've suffered an injury, let's just concentrate on you shooting with one leg all the time. And the dad, who's a very good career manager, I think, just said that was going to be their choice selection in that situation, but which is what, a parent needs to say, but that makes a difference. But Cornell and I've spent more time this summer on the phone and doing stuff than we have in a few years in the same place at the same time. But both of us have encountered a large number of people we work with whose parents are just so obsessed with these dual tournaments.
Oh yeah.
And then ignoring what's on the horizon for their athlete in terms of what weight they need to be for college or their issues, their injury issues, and just wanting to be, I don't know if it's a vibe or I don't know what it is, but they just seem sucked in to.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know.
Well, I want you to cut me off.
When I first got to Wyoming Seminary, that was the main thing. That fall, the kids would go to every dual tournament there was. And then finally, the last couple years, the kids only went to journeyman and Super 32s. And some might get another tournament in. I'm okay with you getting 3 tournament in, but it was like, I guess it was one in Ohio in the fall. It was some other, and they'll get on Team Shut and all these other teams. And these guys, the Elite 8, all these teams. And but I finally was just getting it the way I needed to, where everybody didn't go on all those things and they focused on the training that they were getting. And, but, don't get me wrong. Some kids might need to just to get used to the level of Super 32s because of where we're at, right? Coming into Wyoming Seminary, they may not have wrestled a lot of high caliber competition. So some might need it more than most, but as a majority, in that preseason for high school kids, all you need is 2 or 3. For us, the little kids, I don't know what it is. I think maybe a party time for all the little league parents. But I know like the Virginia duels, the VAC duels, man, that's like one of the biggest events they go to. That like it really means something.
Well, and people get so incensed with it and they get, agitated with me when I don't know what these duels are. And sometimes when I try to explain to them, like, it just doesn't matter. No college coach is asking me. I like to use dual tournaments, particularly during COVID when I had athletes here training, because we were able to train in Virginia a little bit easier than California. So Chris Creason and Cody Thompson, who's an NCAA finalist from a Colorado School of Mines, and those guys were here. We would work on something, and then we'd go to a dual tournament and do it in every match to see if it was going to gel for that athlete. Now, we had a plan of what we were trying to do, and there was no other tournaments to go to and no high school events. But going to these tournaments all the time and spending this enormous amount of money and then getting on teams where it's either not advantageous for them to be successful, or it just didn't work.
Yeah, and I think and not only that, they go to these tournaments and the parents are upset because they're losing. Or I'm like, who cares? It don't even. You're not getting. At least I can understand if you're getting a trophy. My mind, I can understand if you're getting a trophy or some type of external reward, but not even that shouldn't make a difference. But yeah, I mean, these dual tournaments. Okay, well, they lost for the what? Doesn't mean nothing.
Yeah, well, they get so upset.
They'll be fine.
Our team's got to win. Our team's got to win, and I'm like, win what? They're not even usually coached by the person who's even put the team together. And now it's such a scam. They just had at this New Way Rumble, is that right? A person. How many teams?
New Way Rumble.
How many teams did he say he was going to have?
13 teams.
13 teams, and he didn't register.
13
anyone.
teams.
And they all the parents paid. It's right a little over $30,000.
Yeah, and one of the parents I know was on that team, and they had the opportunity for their son to wrestle in the go pool, and they were like, "Hey, should I take it?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I mean, if you're gonna go, you might as well chase the best competition and go to the so-called go pool. But yet, they didn't want to make this person feel bad because they're leaving their team. And they were getting scammed the whole time. Like, it's not your team. Like, they'll find somebody else. Like, and they're not going to blackball your kid. If they do, so what? Like, there's so many tournaments out there.
It's crazy. And and then the whole, we're going to cut weight for a dual tournament. So you're talking about a kid whose growth plates are completely open. You're asking them to cut weight. Some of them put them on 2 or 3 different dual teams. So they're running back and forth. And these kids are not getting enough food right now. I mean, between 5th and 9th grade, they should be eating like a machine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also, I do know as far as kids go and competing, kids enjoy competing on dual teams because it feels like less pressure sometimes than wrestling an individual tournament. Right, because individual tournament, it's all about you. Everybody's focused on you. Your parents focus on you. I think the dual concept takes the pressure away from competing a little bit, knowing you have people behind you and everybody's cheering for you. So I know, and I had a lot of scenarios where kids can wrestle good at dual meets, but didn't do good at the individual tournaments. So I think that's a little bit to do as well.
I think a lot of kids, it's really hard. I mean, even for you and I think when we take time, you take away time from CJ, I'm taking away time from other things, and we're traveling. You have to remember not to say things like, I'm spending my money doing this, or, I didn't pay the electric bill to bring you to this tournament or this duel. And I think that sometimes just comes out of adults' mouths, coaches and kids. And that's very damaging, very damaging. And I just, think that, and the other is just this proliferation of going to tournaments, and people look me right in the eye and they go, it's the the Mason-Dixon Nationals. All right, Mason-Dixon line. It's like this little subset of America, but it's a national tournament. And I'm like, well, maybe. But I know the coaches, I can have a compelling case with a coach about an athlete if they're going to Journeyman, Super 32, and hopefully Walsh Jesuit or Doc P or Powerade. Those are tournaments they're interested in hearing. If I could say this athlete finished on an odd number, 3rd, 5th, 7th, or lost the first match and then came back for 5 more, something at those tournaments is way more compelling than some tournament. And then just this whole rash of parents emoting on social media about how these kids have done, or parents who know every match the kid's going to be in and who these people are. I've never had a college coach say, how did somebody do at the New Way duels against the 8U? And I'm not trying to be I'm not belittling the parents' interest in their kids being successful, but that's not the way. What do you think,
And it
Cornell?
almost seems like
Yeah.
they're
And
chasing
I
validation by
think too,
getting wins all the time rather than having
it's
a
just
long-term plan as to being successful.
go ahead.
What do you think, Cornell? You're going to say something.
Say that one more time. You're not on me.
Can you say that again, Bryce?
Oh, yeah, I think sometimes it's all about, and I experienced this too with my own kids in a couple of other club sports too. That it seems like as parents, we sometimes validate ourselves by watching our kids' success in competition rather than sitting back and thinking about the long-term plan to actually improve over time. It's more fun to watch them win than it is to drive them to practice and let the coaches do their thing.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
get it. I totally
And that's a
get
huge one.
it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one too, because I mean, don't get me wrong, we all take losses personal. I mean, you look at Spencer Lee's mom when Spencer Lee lost, and that's basically a grown college kid. So we get that, and we all invest so much. So we all take it personal, but it's not a reflection on you and your parenting, right?
Right.
I think, and a lot of parents take that as, oh, he shouldn't lose to this kid. That kid sucks. So I must be doing a bad job. No, it's just not his time to win yet, or maybe he needs to do some more developing. So, especially in little league wrestling, if we go on like 13 and 14 and under, 10 and under, 8 and under, all these kids are hitting puberty at different times. No matter how much you train, you may not beat a certain kid because he may have hair on his legs already. Right. So,
Born a third grader.
Yeah. right. It's Pennsylvania. Everybody's a double holdback in Pennsylvania. So that's
probably
give the kids
children.
Yeah, double hold back and giving them hormones, but yeah, so it's just a weird ordeal. I think it's cool that wrestling has taken off. Like the new thing now, which I think you're already on, Carolyn, is so many kids are getting homeschooled, so they can have so many advantages to train, which is good. As long as they're actually doing schoolwork. We gotta give Nolan Saunders credit. He's the first one I know to ever do that. So.
Both and get 2 kids into Linka and Joshua into Cornell.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, yeah, no, so it definitely has its advantages, but just got to make sure it stays healthy. I think.
Go ahead.
No, I just like for Josh, not to call him out personally, but for somebody like Josh, you got to make sure we still instill the love for the sport. That's the hard part.
What is the boy? What the boy's at Sim and he's going to Williams, and then is Avery the girl's name? His sister?
Yeah. Hayden. Yeah, they're good family.
And Avery's the little girl. Last year at Journeyman, I was sitting there and Avery came running up to me. I didn't know them and the dad, and they said, "Oh, we just heard about you on a podcast." And I said, "Oh," and they said, "Yeah, the athlete said that they wrestle because people were always screaming at her and for the boys to pin her when she was like 5 and 6, and that you were the person who made her love wrestling again." And they're talking about a meet, and that's I think that's even though I mean she had a boatload of great coaches, Casey Strand, David Yee, I mean all these great people. But she would come to wrestling prep. I mean, you probably remember her, Bryce, as a little girl. Do you remember Bryce?
I think I was there maybe one summer on a Sunday when she might have been there in the warehouse back in
San Jose,
2023 or 2013, something like that. Yeah.
And she would come, and everybody'd be happy to see her, and everybody's happy to see everyone.
Right.
And it's just this environment where they learn to love wrestling. But sometimes these parents, I think, get wrapped up in wanting things to go a certain way, and then there's so many things on parents' checklists of things to do, and then we just recently, Cornell and I were just discussing this recently, is that some people, they're so upset about how their kids do in freestyle or Greco, but there's, like Cornell points out, there's only like 10 coaches who really know how to coach Greco, and probably just a little bit more that really know how to coach freestyle to be successful at these levels. And you actually have to train it. And, if you're a wrestling prep athlete and you know how to take your body back correctly where you're pushing forward, I mean, that's the key lever for tossing someone or mat returning someone. But if athletes have been doing that since they're little, then somebody like Cornell can take them. Or even if I get an adult athlete and make that better, Cornell and those guys, I mean, I could coach Greco sort of, but not like Cornell can. But if they're already using their body correctly, it's game over when Cornell gets them and they can apply the strategy and the technique that's working currently. Because sometimes, we just watch kids and you want to say, what have they been doing? My kid's been wrestling for 8 years. He's earned a win. Maybe you've just been doing the same thing over and over. No offense, not like in a rude way. And this correlates right back to the homeschooling. So many people homeschool their kids, but they are not supervising. That's why I love Acellus, because it's an online private school and it alerts you if your athlete is online but not actually doing anything. It tells you how many minutes they actually do something, because we have a lot of kids. They're like, oh yeah, this education in our area is good, or they've been homeschooled, and then they present themselves to a university. I think there was some of the kids from Valiant when they first went to universities, they just had not been exposed to the same level of knowledge. The curriculum used was not congruent to the curriculum at some of the better academic schools for wrestling. So they had to catch up. And so we have kids who don't present, and sometimes they catch them up or sometimes they just let it go. And I think the same thing is true with how these athletes use their body and what training they're getting. Some people want to go to a practice and watch their kids run around and sweat, whether they take 50 penetration step shots and they're all bad, or I'm sorry, or if they're all bad, or if they're not correct, then it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think too, like a lot of parents just want, like you said, as long as they're sweating hard, then it's a good practice. No, you can go to a practice and not sweat hard and develop some type of skill out of it. And I try to tell the kids too, like, it's hard though, because wrestling is so ingrained, especially you get in Pennsylvania. Like, you don't go to a football practice and the coach rolls out a football and said, all right, go live. Right? There's our basketball practice, it's not live scrimmage all the time. It's okay, you got to get 30 shots from this to the gym on this angle. Let's pick and roll for 20 minutes. Right? Football is inside, outside drill, 7-on-7, inside zone. Like, you just don't go to football practice and work and go live. And wrestling, you can dissect it the same way. All right, it's inside 30-second drill. Up by 1, down by 2, up by 3. All right, first 30 seconds of the match. Like, all those things can be broken down into scenarios and what is your game plan. I think wrestling coaches have a hard time of dissecting that down.
Yes.
Yeah, I know on the strength and conditioning side too, there's the same argument. Any coach in a weight room or on the track can make you tired and sore. It's not hard to make someone tired and sore given the right implements, but whether or not that is actually amounting to any progress that towards some goal that you might have is way different. And so that's the same thing with the wrestling practice, right?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because that's really the hardest thing I fought at Wyoming Seminary. Was like, practice has got to be hard for you to get something out of it. And like, you can't, they didn't understand play wrestling. They didn't understand sparring. In my mind, I was trying to conserve your body to where I don't grind you, because we had no rules there. So we can practice as many times as we want, but I can conserve you. So at least you can get through a college program. I think the majorities, the parents and the coaches there, they want to grind you down just to get you to the college. But I don't think, I don't know if you're going to have that much success afterwards. And I mean, I'm just talking about Wyoming Seminaries because I know the most out of it. But their first All-American, I think, besides Mike Mullen, it was only one for that long period of time from like 2010 until 2023 until Bo Bartlett, All-American, and Lachlan McNeil. Those are like only one All-American, 23 that they had because it's hard for these guys to make it through. They get grind down so much.
Well, that's so interesting you say that because when I was around Sam, when Carson Manville was there and Timmy Levine and Alfonso Martinez, there was a long group of kids, athletes that I worked with. Alfonso's from where near Bryce. And when I would go up and stay with Susan Manville and work with Carson, Mr. Bartlett would come open the Great Hall, and Carson would body leverage and Timmy and my guys, or the guys I was working with, and Andre was having Bo do athletic movements too. They had their own system, but he was cross training and having Bo lift for wrestling. He was not just going to any place to lift to get stronger, to have sort of this powerlifting build. It was specific. It was specific. And when I remember one time, Aaron Gandara was with me and he was considering going to SEM, and we were visiting, and Carson and Aaron were getting ready to wrestle somewhere to qualify. They both qualified for the Pan Ams that year. And we were training, and Scott Green came over and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, they're going to practice this shot to a throw 20 times. He's like, "Oh, I've never seen anybody do that." And Susan's like, "Keep going." We just had specific things we were working on, but it was so foreign to him and I can't think of Greg and those guys. It was so foreign to them that they had never been. Now it's like, we're just going to do situational for the game plan for going to Akron and winning those spots. That's what we wanted to do, is win those spots. And then I'd watch the film. We knew what we expected to happen, and we were training for those strengths with those two athletes, and it proved successful. That's just what we did. We didn't grind the whole time. We just did the things and went to eat.
Yeah. No, that's the best part of it. And one thing you said earlier too was, when you're talking about a meet, like you recognize that she has so many other coaches. And I think so many coaches, and I'm not saying I'm the end all be all because I don't know, but I know as coaches and been around some of the best coaches I've seen, they all realize that they're just a part of the kid's journey. They're not the most important part of the kid's journey.
Well, you can't even determine what the most important, important part is.
But some people think they are the most important part, though. They're like, "Oh, you have to do it my way."
Well, that is what one of the small components we're going to be dealing with in this upcoming coaches clinic by having Tenny McCarty and Melissa Ritchie there is, if you are a coach and this is how you feel, why? What's the hole in your self-awareness, self-image, your journey that's making necessary for you to project your need to appear dominant on somebody that's under 18 years of age or under 21 years of age? When you think about it that way, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I would never want to do that." And then when you reflect on your own behavior, all of us can go back and see where we're like, "Whoa, why? What was that? Where was that coming from? Is that really who I want to be as a coach? And why is that pulsing in me, wanting to come out and dealing with it?" And I think about you. So, right, so this is my 20th year of doing this. And I've been around, as you know, maybe you could tell them about your experience with Daniel talking about me and stuff with Gaethje and those guys. But I've been around a bit, and I know I'm friends, entangled with a lot of really good athletes that I have contributed to their success. And I have been attacked by people who say, "She said she helped this person," or "She said this." I don't even really even talk that way. Like, I recognize that everybody is part of a stack. But in all those years I've done that, what I've noticed that is key about Cornell, people could say they're going where they're friends with, but when I look to left or right at a tournament or event or where a high level group of athletes are, I see that people like Cale Sanderson, like other people are coming over and wanting to hang out with Cornell, and Cornell is welcome in what I would call their intimate scenarios with their athletes, like private coaching, not open camps. I mean, places where Cornell is always welcome and wanted, and nobody really has anybody who's nationally recognized or internationally recognized. Nobody has a bad thing to say about Cornell. Only people that are not as big time as they think they are have who I would consider could benefit from some internal inspection, as we all can and do, feel things toward him or even toward me, because I am exactly this way all the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and that's I don't know if you guys hear me, it's freezing up a little bit, but
well, we can hear you.
I just really okay. Just thinking back to, I don't want to keep talking about Sim a little bit, but I do know, those coaches who I worked with at Sim, everything was based on what they've done before. And, when we won this, we won that. I'm like, we're still winning the same amount.
Or more.
Or more, basically. And like they won 2 national titles, which was kind of an asterisk one because of COVID, and Blair wasn't there, right? So, and we won 2 national titles.
For sure. Not
Blair's not there.
Wrestled.
Yeah, if Blair's not there, it doesn't count. So it's just like, but it's just funny that, these people see like it has to be their way to win, and it's 1,000 ways to skin a cat and get through.
I remember one year Cody Rodoval was wrestling and he won the California State tournament, and this other family was so mad. They go, he's just doing junk technique. I'm like, come on. He beat Vlad Dombrowski, who was so great, and pinned him in the finals. And they were saying, I was like, I didn't argue with these people because I loved them and I wasn't trying to pick a fight. But I was like, that's the way it is. And I think too, you're just welcome with all those people. So in his post-SEM career, we have mutual friends who really want him to come train their athletes or be on their coaching staff. And I think it was interesting because Cornell told me when he went to see them that he learned things about me that he did not know. And that, that I never discussed with people, and Daniel would have never known if he hadn't invited me into this scenario that overlapped with my other things I've done in my careers.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it sounds like part of that too probably goes back to Cornell, your posture as you were talking about at the very beginning of our conversation, where you're looking at something new. Carolyn, you meet Carolyn and a couple of her athletes doing some things that are very strange that don't usually happen in a wrestling room, and looking at that and saying, well, what can I learn from this, and how can I apply this and make my coaching better and my athletes better, rather than just throwing up an ego and deciding that it was silly or pointless, or I already know everything. And just, I thought I saw it in a bio at one point that you're a teacher as well. So we talk about being lifelong learners all the time in education, and it sounds like you have that posture. And it's really easy to hang out with someone who is willing to listen to you and learn from you, rather than someone who's just going to tell you the best way to do something and couldn't be told any different.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think the cool thing, especially with wrestling, because it's wrestling is a living, breathing puzzle. Like, it can change at an instant. And being around my kid, like Luke Lillardall, and me and him are discussing technique that I showed him that he critiqued now. He's like, no, I do it this way now, coach, because it gets me there faster. I'm like, oh, show me, right? And so it's just interesting how much you can keep learning from these kids now and everybody.
Well, that's what we want.
Right.
That's what you want, right? If you can teach somebody how to do something and they can make it better and bring it back. So the next, the evolution of this and being collaborative. And so what I think about Luke, I don't know. I've been hanging out at at SEM for, off and on for a pretty long time. And one thing that I notice is and with other athletes from schools that have got, named programs, whether it's a club or a school, is that sometimes people who are in those clubs or those schools feel by association that they could put on sort of this persona that doesn't correlate to their ability to wrestle. And then how they speak to others or adults is predicated on this sort of defensive, I'm great because I go here attitude. First time I met Luke, we were, I don't know if it was journeyman, but we were over at Mannheim and you weren't there yet. And I needed to weigh Chris Crawford and Chris Creason. And there was a scale. And one of the parents from a northeastern state, she was saying I couldn't use the scale. And Luke said, he was young, ninth grade, I think. And he said, no, my coach, Coach Robinson, likes her. She can use our scale. And for a ninth grader to stand up to who I think most people consider a little bit dominant woman, parent, and say, no, this is what, with just a very soft voice. I think around me, he came more and more out of his shell over time, as he maturated. But most all the athletes have been around Cornell for a long time are very comfortable with who they are. And if I would say to Cornell, hey, is it okay if I show Luke something? And I would say, Luke, do you want to? He'd be like, oh, yeah, please. Never, and not that I did that very often, but he never acted like, or Joe Seeley, they never acted like they were, or Nate Desmond, they never acted like they weren't interested in learning. And I think that comes from a coach that's been collaborative with them. And that's what we want because Cornell can't go everywhere with these athletes. I can't go everywhere with these athletes. And as much as we want to, and I think that's what I'm hoping people are going to learn, adults, coaches, and kids, is how to take on some of the personality traits that either Cornell's had innately or he's developed over association with all these great coaches all these years or all these world teams, 12, 13 world teams. I mean, exponentially, the amount of information. You could be a high school coach for 60 years, 80 years, and be seeing the same thing over and over. You're on a world team, you're traveling with the world team, you're traveling to overseas with UFC fighters, you're asked to, be in the room like I am with those people. I'm getting this wide range of information and knowledge. And Cornell is too, and he brings it back and he's ingraining it in his athletes. And if parents and coaches could take that sort of mindset where there needs to be a project manager and there needs to be a coach, and your kid, you need to keep them training with people who have this kind of exposure and not getting worried about the emotion that some of clubs and schools create that almost puts panic in people whose self-images aren't as optimal as we all hope each of us can be. If you're a parent or a coach, you have to want to be the best person you can be, or you're going to fall off the vine. Is that, do you think that too, Cornell, or?
Yeah, for sure. And then just got to realize, like, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's just wrestling or combat sport. It should be fun. Definitely should be fun. And then, the good and the bad. That's the hard thing. Everybody, once the bad happen, it's not fun anymore. It's funny. The year we were supposed to win a state title at my first job, I had Timberland. Excuse me. And we ended up taking third. And we lost like the last 7 matches of the tournament. And Lincoln was on that team. He was one of the coaches on that team. And to this day, it was like, didn't feel good. But why not? We took third. It was like the first team trophy the school has ever had. Like, you guys, they were walking around feeling sad. Like, I'm not going to feel sad because we didn't win the tournament. Like, it's the first school trophy we ever had. Yeah, I mean, areas you're supposed to win, but there's no such thing as supposed to. You get what you earn. We earned the third place. Go celebrate.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly.
Remember, they just did not want to celebrate or do nothing. Go ahead. They didn't want to celebrate or do it, make them feel so bad.
I remember when I was there when CBC, I think you won your first state title. Is that correct? I was in Missouri, and we all in CBC went out to eat the same place Park Hill went out to eat, a pizza place. And we were all there, and I was friends with the Park Hill people. I actually got yelled at by a CBC mom for speaking to one of the de Blasi boys because I was a traitor to Cornell, but I wasn't. But when we all got there, the coaches that were there from Park Hill and the coach in Cornell and stuff, everybody was fine. I think Park Hill got second or third or whatever they got, and it was fine. Yeah, when I walked around the thing, the Saunders and those guys, Will Edgar, they wanted me to take pictures with them, and then the CBC kids wanted. It was like a no big deal. Just the fact that you're competing, or you can compete, or you're a part of something. All those things matter. And this whole jump to having to be number one, the best national tournament, is a reflection of society and where you see yourself and how you view yourself as a person. And the great thing about realizing that about yourself, is you could change that.
Yeah, you can definitely change that. And we had that this year at Wyoming Sim. I mean, they're bummed out we took third. I'm like, hey, we had 3 national champs not in our lineup this year. We lucky we got third. Like, and it should be celebrated. Like, there's nothing wrong with third place. Like, hey, I want to win them all like the best of them. But I knew if circumstances were the other way, we probably would have pulled it off. All right. And we still almost did. But, sometimes everybody just wants the result and not the hunt of it.
Oh, and they don't, and it's just so, I get it, especially if you're paying out that tuition for SEM or Blair or some of these other private schools, which can be a lot, right? And what's SEM 72 or 1,000 something, 2,000 a year, and your particular athlete doesn't do well, and you've banked on them going there, and this is going to make them this success or go to these colleges. I can get how it's easy to start looking and blaming or pointing fingers, but in actuality, for that situation, was Seamus, Nate, and Vince not wrestling? Is that right? At Prep National?
Seamus, Nate, and Vince,
Yeah, Vince Mousakis, Seamus Reagan, and Nate Desmond. When you take out your 3, I don't even know who won that Lake Highland Prep, right? But if they took out and 2 other, because I coached Robert growing up, you take out 2 other athletes and Kacharzik for injury, they would have been in the same spot.
Right. But it just kind of seemed like they kind of forgot that, and it is what it is. But it's one thing you said about mindset, and one story, not to keep mentioning Kale, but I know he is kind of one of the best coaches in the game now, but it was funny. Carter Starachi had the story of when he hurt his knee that year, and he's at the NCAA tournament, and I guess Kale told him, like, hey, you're not going to win this tournament because your knee's hurt. But the thing you can change is your attitude. You can still kind of have fun and enjoy competing, but your knee's never going to change. It's not going to change now. It's hurt, but your attitudes can change real quick and make it a lot better. And that ended up being one of his best tournaments, NCAA tournaments that year.
That's so exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt.
It's important to remember, right? That we're doing this for fun. I always think about seems like a lot of parents and coaches have sort of a social media carousel of just constant disappointment, right? That they didn't quite get their kid or their team never quite gets the result that they want, so they're going back to work, and instead of
back to the drawing board,
I'm being grateful for the opportunity just to do this because it's fun, right?
Right. I mean, it's super fun.
It is.
Yeah. We can go and have a good time.
I know that did both of you also want to talk a little bit about what you've been
the
up
highs
to
are highs and the
this
lows
summer?
are lows.
What'd you say, Bryce?
Oh, I think as we think about wrapping up, maybe I think both of you also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things you've been up to this summer. Is that?
Yeah, Cornell just coached a world team. Is that correct?
Pan Am team this year. Pan Am team at pretty nice, and the athletes America does usually pretty good at the Pan Ams. You know, true American kids are getting on Team Puerto Rico,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, all these other nations now, younger. Like
Yeah,
before,
younger.
you may have somebody transfer to another nation once they get to the senior level, but now we're starting to get a lot of kids go to Mexico at a younger age. So it's starting to get a little tough for America at this Pan Am. But yeah, that was my main thing, just going to Brazil and coaching the Pan Ams. And I think
the Penn
Fargo's
State
going
camp.
on now. So this is like my first year not being in Fargo, probably in 20 years. Go
And
ahead, Carolyn.
you coached at the Penn State camps too, right?
Oh, yeah, I did Penn State. That was always a good 2 weeks there, maybe week and a half. They have the Japanese sensation Masa Ono. I'm not pronouncing his name all the way correct, but he's a fan favorite and really a good personality, good kid, and I got to really learned a lot from him actually, and just how and it's so interesting how different cultures see wrestling. It's just so interesting in the training behind it, how they view it. So it's always pretty interesting. And it's funny too. I had one of the coaches at Sim say to me, "Hey, did you hear Ono said in Japan all they do is go live all the time?" And I was like, "Yeah, but their live is a little different than our live, and they don't compete a lot overseas as much as we do. So it's totally different."
Comes back to what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yes. Well, I've overlapped with Cornell some this summer, but we've already been to Kentucky, Montana, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, South Dakota. We had week 1 of camp.
Mhm.
We had some professional baseball coaches in for that, and then we have. I'm trying to convince Cornell to come to week 2 or week 3, but I think if any, it'll be week 3. But we have the coaches clinic coming up, and Bryce, you'll be out for that.
I'll be there this
Sophia
weekend.
Viner will be, Sophia Viner will be here, and Teddy McCarty and Melissa Ritchie, and I think we have athletes from 12 D1 programs coming, and we have 31 states and 5 foreign countries at this camp. So it'd be crazy level, like Craig Jones Invitational, a top jujitsu. Yeah, coming, and they're coming too, and it's going to be fun. And then I know you could still come for week 2. I'll get you a ticket. And then we have
at least a couple of days. Give you a couple of days around there.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about this offline. And then, interestingly enough, I got contacted by these baseball, and just so there's the Dodgers who I've been working with, and their athletes are all doing the body leveraging now. And I've got tons of video of it, but I'm not allowed to show it. Can't put it up anywhere. And then now when we're going to go down to Tampa to be motion captured, and so I could try to show the different velocities by the different degrees of angles and the specific use of the parts of the calf muscles and the hamstrings to create more trajectory and velocity. So we're going to go down there to Tampa for me and Ben Harders, and they're going to motion capture Ben, and then we're going to do it with baseball players, and then we're back, and then we have week 3. And then I'm going to be at Lake Highland Prep at the end of August, coaching some. And I think like I talked to you about the other night, Cornell, our friend in the D1 program, wants me to come down for a few days and work with their athletes. And I'm sure Rob Cole will have me down too, because I love when people say to me, "Oh, I talked to Rob Cole and he said the most important person your kid should train with is Carolyn." So I feel very fortunate. So I think both Cornell and I've had a good
That's
summer.
awesome.
Yeah. And I'm going to hold you to that week 2 or week 3,
All right.
Cornell.
Yeah, and also been awesome. Now, I think it's pretty cool though that yeah, I think it's pretty cool that the Major League Baseball players see the importance of the body movements and like you're real. I mean, I'm just saying athletes and coaching general see the importance of that. You know, because I think now I say yours is definitely wrestling specific, but I'm sure you can transform it into any other beneficial for all athletics.
Yeah, once I see it, once I watch it, then I can do it. But I just love it. It makes me so happy. And uh, I was when we were in Vegas for the U.S. Open, and I ended up the Dodgers pitching coach was there with me for a week with me and Ben and Rob. I was talking on the phone to Rob Cole, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing when you're going to be over at the venue?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "I'm working with the Los Angeles Dodgers pitching coach." He goes, "Oh, well, that's a lot more legitimate than being over here with a bunch of stinky, stinky wrestlers."
Right, right.
And I was just so grateful that Rob saw that value, or this mutual coach that you and I know, Nate, Cornell, that says, I think this is valuable. People have learned over time that it can make a difference. So anyway,
Yeah, that's awesome to take
Awesome.
the experience and intuition you have and make some measurements motion capture wise and sort of sees how those things overlay with one another. And um,
but it'll
that'll
be
be
it'll be
really
so great. I'm so excited to go.
yeah, yeah.
We
Awesome.
fly in and we fly in. We're there for 2 days. We fly out. But
Now,
it's
how many different countries have called you over to do a clinic for
Oh,
a seminar?
yeah, lots. I was at Finland last year. I coached the Finnish Olympic team. Every single coach in Finland, like their organization that's probably similar to USA Wrestling, had me coach their mandatory annual coaches. And then they had me coach every Olympic coach at the Helsinki Olympic Training Center. And I just recently, I think you and I discussed, got a call from somebody who's involved, who's coaches the Chinese team, an American, who wants me to come, see if we can work that out to go there. And, Captain America, Eric Albersayan, and those guys, I'm going to Scotland, Thailand, and probably Natal, Brazil this year. But, I get asked a lot to come to those places. My conundrum has always been that I was entwined with specific high school or younger age kids, and I felt like I had to be there for them all the time, but I don't share that anymore. I'm looking more for people I work with to have a parent or a coach that's like you, or a parent that's involved who makes good decisions and combines a lot of people. I think the best example of that is Maurice Worthy Sr., who was an NCAA finalist at West Point. I think they've only had 3 or 4 finalists ever. I don't think, has ever won. But Maurice is this, his kids barely compete. They went to McDonough. They did the Triple Crown. And I think they went to Freestyle State last year in New Jersey. They may have gone this year, but I don't think they did, or if it hasn't happened. But that's all Maurice does. He does not believe in this over competing, comparing. He just wants to go, see where they are, and he has a plan for training, and he integrates those athletes, his athletes, with about 3 or 4 coaches who I think he considers core coaches, and then probably some more where they just go touch and do things. But he's the leader of that. So, I'm doing more of that now, like wanting to work with parents who are like that, who are committed. I don't want to just teach somebody something for a few days and not have them be committed, because I know I could go instead to, somewhere else. I could go anywhere and just go out to the PI and just coach, pro fighters who want me to be there, go down to Miami and work with the guys at Henry I mean, yeah, at Henry Hoof's place or whatever the name of it is currently. That place changes names a lot. Or go work with Jorge Masvidal and his son. Now I'm doing more of that. And people can come integrate with me and I'll go integrate with them and give them every opportunity. But, I'm going to go to Journeyman. I'm going to go to Super 32. I'm going to get, at Doc B's if I can make it. I'll go to these tournaments that really matter and help train people for them. But I'm not, darting around, and I'll go to 1 or 2 dual tournaments a year and coach for Blaine, especially if I have, if Jacob and Max and Joshua Schaub and the Worthies and those kids are all, running around, I'm going to go do that. But I'd rather go overseas now and see what I can learn and commit. And Bryce and I, who's just been, if it wasn't for Bryce, I would have never put a course online because I'm just not, my autism and my perfectionism and stuff doesn't allow me to do that. But Bryce is, God knows. I mean, I know why he's still married because I'm a nightmare. And he puts up with me. But now we have these courses online that I think are going to impact people, combined with Sophia Viner, who's got this unbelievable skill to look at film of me doing stuff and pull it out. And before we had some videos that have gotten 6 million views, and stuff over the years. But now most of the videos we post are getting 1 million to 2 million views within 3 or 4 days. And the majority of those are when I'm coaching, is when I'm explaining what I'm doing. And the response is crazy. And then
I know if
say it again.
Oh, sorry, I went out. But I know if I was thinking in my head, if I would have got the developmental job, I know, I think that would have been a big component. Like I made it to the USA developmental system.
Yeah, I think it's key. And so I forgot to say that in Dagestan, in 2020 or 21, we had a fight camp in Vegas, and I took Chrissy with me. Chris went with me, and the guy who runs Dagestan's youth development and all the way, the big guy, he took every piece of video, and that I know that they are doing that. And when I went to Estonia with Joshua Schaub 2 years ago, people would come up to me and tell me that were from Russia, that they knew how to do that they'd seen the video. And it's actually a video list of Joshua Saunders and Chris doing everything together. But I think it's going to make a difference. And I do think in the US, just like you were describing, Kale's son is now starting 9th grade and doing really well, but he's not really competed till this year, but he's always just trained. I think if more people had their athlete come and stay for a couple of weeks with me in the summer and touch me once or twice during the year, that they would have more success. And I know that Mo Worthy has taken what I've done and it's part of their daily process.
Yeah.
Have we talked to everybody silly, Bryce?
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that was
Coach
just awesome conversation. And yeah, thanks, Cornell. It was great to meet you. It was awesome to hear all your insights from the experience and knowledge that you have. And the combination of you and Carolyn was a good conversation. So good to meet you, Carolyn. I'll see you this weekend at the coaches.
Can't wait.
I'm excited to see you in person. It's been a couple of years, so I'll excited to head back.
It'll be good. And I'm calling you later, Cornell, with my travel app open
as well.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see you all next time. Bye.
Love you guys. Bye.